It was a lot bigger back then than it is now. It's really niche now. And I think it's really that's what that responsibility we talked about to keep the riders going. How can you keep the riders going? You need to be able to make sure you have a mentoring program, a league at your track, an academy at your track, a beginner program at your track, you know, anything to keep those beginners. Because if a beginner is in is lost and they don't understand the sport, they're going to get intimidated and they're not going to come back. But if you're able to at least be greeted by somebody, a new rider program, once a month, once a week, whatever you can do, anything to give them the opportunity to grow inside the sport and not be as intimidated. A lot of people have a passive personality. Some people have an aggressive personality. Some people fall in the middle. People have so many things to do, but it's really responsibility of the track to facilitate a program that riders can be involved in. But it really comes down to the family and friends. How can that rider get to the races? Does he?
BMX Breakthrough is bridging the gap from old school to new school, from tracks to manufacturers, from new riders to their local tracks, and it doesn't stop at racing, but the mission is to connect people with bikes. Join me, Jay Oaks, as I interview key people in the sport and in the industry that are involved in their local circles, in their communities, at their local tracks, and aiming to make a difference on a local level. You'll hear stories, marketing tips, failures, successes, and a way to make a difference in your local BMX community. Let's dive in as we kick off this next episode.
It's not really commonplace nowadays to have so much of a voice in BMX, but get involved with an individual like yourself with you said it's BMX Breakthrough, right?
Yeah.
You have kind of a different concept, which is always interesting because it's one of those things where let's get my notes here, where not very many people have anything to add to the sport. And I'm not saying everybody takes away from the sport, but it's a really hard niche sport. It always has been. It's still, in my opinion, continues to struggle as far as credibility, just the longevity of somebody staying in the sport, because usually if you're an athlete, you become a brand manager or you become a team manager or you become XYZ and you try to prepare yourself, for, life after BMX. A lot of the rock guys I raced, were in college and they took college. But honestly, it took away from their performance. It was really hard. You only have a certain amount of energy, but and in essence, some of those riders are in better places post BMX than they were when they were in the heat of battle as a professional. Those guys that were in the heat of battle and focused only on BMX, shine a certain way during that time period, but then now they kind of struggle after the fact. So it's a really interesting dynamic. And, I've always really been involved with BMX just from the pure heart of things. It's really, and for me, it's in my blood, it's in my bones, and it's really hard not to be involved. It's really hard not to try to give back to the sport that's given you so much. And so it's just, I'm one of the ones that's still left, and I teach locally here in Florida, but I'm not in the media. I'm not in the in front of people, like even some of the best pros, even some of the recent pros are I guess you'd say, quote unquote, being forgotten. I don't really say it's being forgotten. They're just not being seen because, either they're on to other different parts of their life. The sanctioning bodies only carry a certain amount of press materials, posters, and, stuff like that. So it's an interesting thing. I think it would be nice if you could log in somewhere and really see people, people involved in the sport, maybe character profiles. And I think USA BMX has done a pretty good job with that, but it'd be nice to log into a portal that you can see people. And, I don't know, they're a work in progress, but, there's a lot of things that could be done for the sport. And I'm here for doing what I can when I can. So I enjoy it.
That's awesome. Well, I really appreciate it. And John, I think to dive into even further conversation here, to know who you are. So you were one of the people that I looked up to as a kid. And so I will be honest, this interview is a little bit surreal. I'm a terrible fanboy. And I've told people that I'm a terrible fan, because I, because, what you've done in the past is cool. And I remember I had, some posters of you and stuff, but really I want to know who you are now and what you're doing for the sport now. And I definitely want to dive into a little bit of who you were and what you did. But but right now, present day, like you said, aren't a ton of people that are still in the sport and still contributing to the sport in the same way that they maybe were when they were actively racing or at their peak performance or whatever. So anyway, this is a really fun conversation to have with you, and I appreciate your time and generosity to have this conversation. But will you do a quick introduction for those that may not know? Who are you?
Well, my name is John Purse. My voyage and journey of BMX started on February 8th, 1981 with a second place and a trophy. And I've been addicted ever since. Addicted to the sport, addicted to the race, addicted to the energy that you get, addicted to everything that was involved with the sport. And now it's just really, for you, it's surreal. I appreciate those kind words. And it's just surreal to be involved in a program like this and be involved in the sport, teaching in the sport. There's a lot of projects that I'm doing in the background, that may come to light in relatively soon. Athletes that I'm training, actually kind of globally, not a lot, but I'm helping people in other countries as well. So it's one of those things where I'm just doing what I can when I can, just because it feels great. I feel like a responsibility, because it's for us that have, even if you haven't accomplished a great deal, maybe you didn't have an opportunity, you still know BMX, you still can contribute. You don't have to be the best of the best to help at your local track, to volunteer, to give, beginner trainings, stuff like that. So there's so many different broad levels of how you can be involved in the sport. And that's what I've always been intrigued by, is being involved not only as a coach, but just even on the business side of things, and seeing how hopefully BMX can get the credibility that, it needs to kind of, it's gone to another level. And there's a lot of people that says that Olympics are a bad thing. I don't think they are. We're in the Olympics. How we got there is irrelevant to why, because there's a possibility we never would be in there. What would you compare it to? Would you rather not be in the Olympics because it was a supercross format? Or are you okay that it's in the Olympics? That's the only way it would have got in the sport. The sport would have gotten into the Olympics. I'm okay with it. There's a lot of debatable items about, the size of starting hills, the size of whatever. But, I was really fortunate at the end of my career to kind of be involved in that road to the Olympics. And it all kind of started with Vans downhill BMX. That was the extreme. And I don't think they even were thinking Olympics back then. But, X Games picked it up after they did three races. I think it was in 2020, I believe. X Games picked it up for 3 years. We were in BMX downhill was in the downhill BMX was in the Olympics, and the X Games for 3 consecutive years. And then UCI, Johan Lindstrom with UCI picked it up or helped picked it up, and then created what you see. He picked up I think it was in 2003, I believe, or 2004, the downhill BMX, and then created what you saw in Salt Lake City in the parking lot, so to speak. Or actually, no, it was Do Action Sports Store in San Jose. I'm getting my decades mixed up here, but yeah, it's just I was involved in that road. I did kind of age out of the sport right at the end, 2006, right before debuted in BMX, but I was kind of just fortunate to be involved with USA Cycling. There was a couple different training opportunities we had pre-Olympics and all that kind of stuff, just for testing athletes, even for velodrome. even 4 years prior. So there was a lot of cool things, but I'm just hopeful that BMX can continue to grow above and beyond, especially in the market that we have now, just with children and people being able to do so many different things with their lives, and to pick BMX is a little bit more challenging than it used to be. There's so many other things that children can be involved in. So I just hope the best for BMX, and if I can help in any way, shape, or form, I'm here.
That's awesome. I want to key in on something that you said is you talked about you don't have to be somebody in that was a name in the sport. You don't have to have done something great. You can just be a person, and everybody's great in their own regard, and people have their greatness to share with the world. But like you said, you don't have to have had a name or to have been a pro level rider in order to volunteer and contribute to your local track. And that's exactly how the sport grows is really by the people that weren't and that aren't. And I talk about that on a regular basis is the sport grows because of the people that are not in it. And from a business consultant background, having had an approach to marketing, and you look at things, and the sport doesn't grow by marketing to the expert and pro level riders. The sport grows by marketing to those who have no idea what BMX is. And so exactly what you talked about, it falls into the same category as the way that we're going to build and better tracks in the sport as a whole is through people that didn't have a name and just want to contribute and help out.
Yeah, absolutely. In USA, BMX has a great coaching program, because I like they have a mandate that if you're gonna teach at a track, that you have to get your license, because they're going to give you some information. They're going to make sure you're vetted, make sure you understand the concept. It's just not every person can just go to a track and coach, and I do like that. I love that accountability and responsibility that they've instilled. It's not, everybody can say, well, it's USA's BMX's way of controlling is. No, it's just they're really creating a mandate or creating an environment to where if you want to contribute at your track for a certain amount, you have your license, you're going to get the information you need, maybe some education you need. You're going to have it's just good energy. And, I like that. So, and with the basics, with beginners, yes, it's great to have somebody that's done a great amount of things in the sport. Is it completely necessary? No, it's just, you can teach basically bicycle safety to BMX racers, how to get on the gate, how to balance. There's so many things you can do to help that rider move forward, even if you haven't accomplished great things. And I think that's what more tracks need to employ, so to speak. I'm meaning employ, meaning work together, have an organization, have a pro, have an organization. And that's what I was doing formerly. I moved here to Florida 6 years ago. And actually, speaking of Johan Lindstrom, I bought his business, Jomo Sports. And that DBA was Sarasota BMX Academy. And I was engaged with Sarasota BMX Academy for the end of 2018, 19, 20, 21, and 22. Unfortunately, on my end, I got a very, very good education with how politically unjust things can be. And I got myself into a really big political mess here in Sarasota. And in the end, I was forced out, that happened. I didn't do anything wrong. That's the part of the sport that, in my opinion, is unjust and unfair, but it is what it is. You see it in common government. We just had an election. Everybody has something to say. You can be the best person for a position or be doing such a great thing, but if it's politically unjust and you're forced out, you're forced out. You don't have any say to do. So getting back to where you said, what does John Purse do? John Purse moved his entire life to Sarasota, Florida, had a great program, Sarasota BMX Academy, but yet forces kind of just ended it. So now I actually teach also now at Charlotte BMX. Amanda Carr, which is Team Thailand. Once upon a time, she had 2 Olympic runs. She's a great track operator. They have a great positive environment down there with their 501c3. Just doing great things. She is a former athlete. She has a little bit different vision for a track than say some others could. So she gives back to the sport and allows me to get out there and teach. I'm actually teaching there tomorrow night, Thursday, because I was doing a Tuesday night program and I was helping there with them with their team on Thursdays. We've had some hurricanes that have kind of disrupted a lot of things in the rainy season. Um, Evenings are hard to do in Florida at a certain time of the year. So now we're in a drier weather. So now I'm resuming my teaching out there. I spent the summer out at First State BMX in Delaware. I have a great family there that's got me involved in that track. So I'm making my way around, doing the best that I can. But I just enjoy being involved in a healthy track environment, because there are a lot of unhealthy track environments and everybody can agree to that. And I'm not throwing stones. It is what it is. And I just feel that USA BMX gives you a template. They give you the support that you need. There's a lot of things that is debatable, but it comes down to the track, to run that track as a business. How do we do that? We need to make sure that we're marketing. Every track could have an academy. There's nobody that says that every track could not have an academy. You can have an academy on the day before, the morning before, teaching, because it's your best advertising. And we did a great deal with the membership at Sarasota BMX. But in the end, it wasn't up to me. So I've moved on. I'm also a contractor. In high school, I picked up landscape irrigation. Early on, instead of going to college, I wanted to be a professional rider. So in 1990 is when I became pro. And I was amateur until then, but so I just kind of had to say, okay, I got to pick up the pieces. I crashed and burned hard. It's like, what do you do? BMX has taught you to get back up, get on your bike and ride, instead of giving up on anything, and perseverance is always key. So I haven't had the best road lately, but it's a road that I'm able to get back up and, pick myself up and move on. So, and still be able to contribute to the sport that I love. I'm also a real estate agent here in Sarasota, Florida. I haven't really been able to give a lot of time to that. But, I have my hands in several different things, and I'm really still sorting out my way. I gave it a go. I didn't go to college. I didn't get a master's. I didn't do anything like that. I kind of have that mentality of I've lived the sport when I was in the sport, and I'm experiencing every different level, and life has been challenging for me. But it's challenging for everybody, and everybody has their story. But I still want the best for BMX, moving forward.
That's cool. Yeah, and I think speaking to that, there's a level of, I've got a friend that runs a BMX team now, and one of the things that he is adamant about with his riders is them maintaining good grades in school in order to be on the team. And he goes, I'm not going to let my riders drop out of school and go race BMX in a sport that doesn't pay you to have a career. And there's you can win some money, but you're not going to live a lavish life like pro motocross. You can make some money. But there's a discrepancy between our sport and a sport like motocross or other motorsports, is you get into a spot where the money just is not the same. And so I love the way that he talks about that. And you're speaking right now to the value of some of those riders that ended up maintaining their college education. And not that everybody has to go to college, and I didn't. And so, some people can, some people it's not their thing. But the reality is that there may be a time that you have to look outside and you have to use some of those skills or some of that knowledge or some of those certificates that you acquired. So being able to make sure you're maintaining some of those things and for the sport, because like you said, it is incredibly niche. And so there are some limiting factors to that. But no, I think that's a good point that you pointed out and mentioned there.
Yeah, I agree. I think there was several athletes in my era that I think were financially resourceful right at the end of where BMX turned. And it's like, everybody was so freaked out about Y2K, Y2K, the computers are going to freak out. Y2K was be more freaked about be more freaked out about BMX because BMX turned a different direction. We had different things come into commerce. You have bicycle sales. I was on Redline for the majority of my height of my career. And everybody, and I learned this because I was part of being a brand ambassador for a brand. There was little trends that started to come in. There was the circus bikes, right? The little circus bikes that people rode. I don't know if you remember those. Like they were really small.
Yeah, the little like monkey bikes.
Yeah, the little circus bikes. And then you had the little e-scooters, the little electric scooters. You had all these little things start to come into the market. But if you really analyze it, most people wouldn't just because they're not in the moment. You start to remove 1 million bikes from the market in the state. Say, I don't know the exact numbers, but I think 1 million is probably less than what the reality was. You take 1 million, complete bikes off the market in the US market across the board on multiple brands, it starts to disrupt the flow, of what you're doing. What are we doing? Because now you're not selling 1 million bicycle motocross bikes, whether they become involved in BMX or not. Redline had a bike that was involved with other parts of the sport, or not the sport. It's just regular bikes and cruisers and all that kind of stuff. So you start to do that multiple years where you start to remove this, it starts to change the commerce, start to change the financial lifeline of the sport. Along at the same time, you start to get into more media. You start to get to where we're on television, ESPN, ESPN2, Fox Sports at the height. And then all these things start to filter in. And then for whatever reason, ESPN doesn't pick up the sport anymore. And Fox Sports is not involved. The sanctioning bodies are not involved. A lot of these, I think GT was one of the ones that was financing, the Fox Sports. I mean, it was facilitated in a lot of different ways. And ABA at the time, which is now USA BMX, was involved. Everybody had a hand in it, but dirt jumping is great. They started jumping turns. They started out kind of jumping turns from the infield, and then they've turned into what they've turned into. And that was like around 1995, and dirt jumping became involved in the X Games. So different aspects of the sport start to take a little bit of different media highlights, and then racing, for whatever reason, just kind of maybe they don't continue the sport on television. Whatever reasons, there were a lot of different capacities, or ESPN, ESPN2, things start to affect it. And then by 2000, things started to change and turn around. So now, I mean, fast forward now, you have the Olympics, but there's still only key athletes that are going to be able to be paid well. You get a gold medal in some countries, you're pretty much taken care of for life. You get gold medals in some other countries and you're still doing pretty good. It's a great thing. So it's a different way that a rider can make an income. And right now it's really hard. Everybody complained about the fact that how many races there was. You could go to 50 plus ABA, and then you had NBL. Yeah, that's what we do. We race bicycles for a living, and we're given an opportunity from the sanctioning bodies to go to whatever race we want to go to. That's when we talk about the financial side of the sport. That's when things were at the height. Number one, you were racing a lot more. Number two, you were seen a lot more. You were at events. We had 3 gold cups in the ABA. We had the NBL had the Road to Glory series. They had Huffy. They had a lot of different sponsorships. And then GT, Schwinn had the sponsorships in ABA. Everybody was doing a great thing. But what you see now are less events, more prestige, but less events, World Cup events, the Olympics. You just can't go race. We went from at least 35 to 40 weekends of the year, 52 weeks. So 40 of those were racing, 12 weeks off. Yeah, it's a busy schedule, but you really don't have a lot of time to do the best you can as a business, as an athlete, as a business, because that road will end. For me, it ended at about 33, like a heartbeat. Like I was still trying to, be involved in the sport, race. body's different. It's hard to train. Hats off to riders like George Dowday. Look at what just happened. He's one of the aging riders, 33 years old, that has the support and the science that we have nowadays in the sport to be able to do what he's done. It's just absolutely phenomenal. So pros are lasting longer, but the sport is just not as kind as it used to be, even on the scheduling scenario, because it's like you just got rid of A Pro. Well, A Pro and double A Pro were great. You have 250 class and you have 450 class in motocross. So there's a lot of things that are debatable. But the thing is, a professional rider, I think, is now, instead of being a professional bicycle motocross rider, say you have 12 Americans that could do that. Maybe you have 3 or 4, and everybody's doing well. I'm not throwing stones at any of the guys that are coming up through the ranks, but there's only going to be 3 or 4 that are able to kind of do the best they can in the current, I call it the current market, because it's a business. You're out there doing the best that you can do, but I just hope that the sport can be a little bit more credible and be able to get more sponsorship involved to get back to more events. And everybody too had a hard problem with, there was a lot of pros, I think around the 2000 era. And I remember some of the organizations or both had like a B main, a B final. Okay. I didn't make the A final. I'm racing the B final. I'm there. I'm brand ambassador for my company I race for. I think they even gave you points, but there was guys that didn't show up. Things like why did you ban and boycott time trial? Time trial was on its way to become an Olympic medal sport. Why did you do that?
Hmm.
I love time trial because it gave me a chance to get out there on the track all by myself. There was respect for that. So there's a lot of things that are debatable. But in the current market, it's really hard. It's a really hard business for professional at the moment.
Yeah. It is, and I think that it's important to talk about these things too in the way of riders that are coming up and looking at a pro career in BMX, and not to deter them, but I think education is so valuable,
Yep.
and I think they need to know. Everybody needs to know what they're getting into. If you want to go into the line of work as a surgeon, or if you want to go into a line of work as a landscape designer, like you need to know what you're going into. And in the same way, BMX it's a tough way to make a living, and I think that our sport needs to continue to grow, which is what we have focused on, and through BMX Breakthrough is we're just trying to grow that sport at the local level, because the reality is, if you bring in more riders to a track, more new riders, even if they're riding track bikes now, they're paying entry fees, they're paying memberships, and then next year they'll probably need a bike, and the year after that they'll start needing parts, and then they're going to need helmets, and they're going to need gear, and it's a trickle down, it's a ripple to the industry. And so but again, you can't start at that expert and pro level market and start marketing to them in order to grow the sport, because they're already there. They already know what's happening. But the growth of the sport, and that's how things build. That's how we end up being able to create better careers in the sport, is by the growth of everybody.
Oh, I agree 1,000%. And it starts at the beginner level. I was involved with a couple different track projects. One in Tomball, Texas, is where I grew up. Mike McIntyre is great. He's one that does a lot of the designs for all of the tracks. We were going to do a 3, 5, and 8 meter hill. 3 meter hill was going to be mandated for beginners. There's a lot of debatable items. I'm not going to throw stones at 8 meter. We're in the Olympics, and that's why we're in the Olympics. So let's not throw stones. Let's be gracious for where the sport is, and let's make the changes. I think now it can be a 5 meter hill now, and everybody's so up in arms, but it's like, we need to remember why we're in the Olympics. We're in the Olympics because of where the sport started. Scott Breithaupt, everybody that was involved once upon a time, Cash Matthews in Texas, all of the pioneers that were holding events in their backyard before liability insurance got into a big deal and stuff like that. Now you can't. Now it's really hard to rent a tract of land to have a sport, to have a track. So the sport has come so far, but let's not forget why we're here. We're here in the Olympics because of 1972 or whatever, whenever it starts. But we're also here key components like people like Johan Lindstrom that was dutied. Hey, you come from the skiing background. How can we make you know BMX in the Olympics? Well, at the Do Action Sports Store, one of our first starting ramps had actually had a jump at the bottom. It had a ski lift, which he came from a skiing background. So he brought in a lot of different ideas in the sport that maybe the regular person wouldn't have. We're here. We're an Olympic sport. Let's take advantage of this and let's grow. And I think coaching programs and academies for each track. When I built Sarasota BMX Academy, I made it as a just possibly like a franchisable scenario to where I had a website. The website, all you had to do is change the names. You could copy the website. You could change all of the different T-shirts and all the different stuff that you could sell at the track. I'm not saying I was too early or too late for the market, but I don't think BMX is ready for that. It should be, because every track is a business, and I think every track has a responsibility that maybe they should look deep and say, am I doing enough for my sport? You can't just throw an advertisement on Facebook and expect everybody to show up. They're going to show up at an extreme track like the Olympic caliber tracks. You have that intimidating factor of, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get my child involved in that. And that's what was great about Sarasota BMX Academy. We were able to train everybody, and we had licensed coaches on the track, and we had former pros and active pros. We had a great staff. We had a wonderful time at what we did, but it's a key element that there was really no other place in the country. Clubs do it in other countries, but we had an academy every Saturday from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. You could come ride BMX. You could come practice. You can come get a private lesson. You can come to 10 to 12, which was our beginner and advanced program. So you could learn everything possible. We made sure that safety was our number one issue. Each coach had requirements and mandates that the rider had to do XYZ before you could go down the hill. I mean, it was a great thing. Not every track is like that. You have tracks that are smaller that, okay, you don't have that intimidation factor, but you still need people. You still need people giving back to the sport, that licensed coach that knows enough to keep these people involved. And then you're going to have pros come in and out of the tracks, and a lot of traveling pros that do their thing. Some tracks are not. Some tracks are a little bit more challenged as far as, what they have. I think that's a great thing for USA BMX to maybe look at, and they probably do. I'm not saying they don't. Look at these tracks and go, okay, what's our membership? What is our ridership? Are they giving clinics? Do they have somebody that volunteers? Do they have somebody that actually has an organization that comes in and trains riders? Just looking at it, maybe giving just a little bit more support other than just the sanctioning, hat. They're busy doing nationals. I understand that. But at the same time, these local tracks really, really need that support, especially if not everybody that owns a BMX track has like the capacity to be, a PhD in business. They're just parents that are given the best for their children race. But as you can see, some tracks turn around because that family they move out, BMX for whatever reason. Then you have somebody filling in the shoes, and it's got to kind of restart all over again. So I think there's a lot of things that could be done. And I'm just a voice. I only can do what I can do when I can do it. And like I said, I thank you for this opportunity, because it just really gives people something to think about, moving forward and trying to navigate through the challenges that we have as a sport that's Olympic.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that you're right on in talking about that. If you look at the tracks that are growing, I think a couple of the problems, even as you mentioned, is that there could be potentially more support, but I think people, for the most part, they know what they're getting when they sign up, and USA BMX provides the insurance. They are the sanctioning body, and they provide a lot of details, but their goal is not to market your track. You have to do that on your own. And
Yep.
I was recently talking to a track operator, and I said, I offered some basically marketing coaching calls, and it's something that I'd like to start up again for tracks that are interested. I can help you provide some easy ways to reach your community. And there are a lot of track operators, same as business owners, that think that what they're doing is perfect, is flawless. There's nothing that can be improved because they know exactly what they're doing. And most of them are volunteer. They're working outside jobs, which I have huge appreciation for. But some of them think that they're doing what is perfect. Some of them are declining. They don't want to give another day, but for the most part, it seems like the tracks that I see that are growing are the ones that are investing into their new riders. And Paul DePaul up in Illinois, he has invested into BMX League. And I think that what Donnie
Yeah.
and Mike Caruth
Right.
have
Right.
created is
Absolutely.
so valuable. And Paul said, like Paul DePaul said, that he was incredibly resistant to it. And he goes, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And it was because he didn't want to give another night. Well, he ended up taking, and he said, well, we can either lay here and die, or we can see what we can do about it. And so he gave
Mhm.
another night, or somebody could turn their midweek race night into that league program. But he called me the other day and he said that his Halloween race, he goes, Jay, our numbers for the Halloween race, we had, what did they have? 51 motos,
Wow.
217 for rider count, and their 50-50 giveaway
Wow.
was just over $1,300.
Wow. That's amazing. That's
And
great.
Paul, in the interview that we did, I still love this. He goes, if you want to know 5 things to grow your track, I would say league, 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 and then maybe
Yeah.
some flyers, but do league. And it speaks to, he's an example of a track that is growing. He's not talking about it and then not doing it and nothing's happening, or talking about it doing something and nothing's happening. He's doing it and it's turning out the results that we want. And Donnie Robinson has shown time and time again that his league program produces results. And
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
that's exactly what we need. And so anyway, it's really fun to be able to see those examples, and then to be able to talk about, what is it that the sport needs, and the sport needs people that are dedicated to the growth of the sport.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And that's one thing, hats off to them, Mike and Donnie. They kind of created that academy, a different type of approach than we had. Every business and everything is a little bit different how they do it. But yeah, they've done a phenomenal job of getting those numbers to the tracks. And all tracks have to do is participate. All tracks have to do is, join the league, have some sort of a program that's available. And it does come down to, you just said, giving a day. Well, take a day and give to the sport, give your day to the sport, give your day to your business. And I think if more people actually treated the track like a business, like this is how I'm going to eat, um, you know, they would do different. It's like they would be marketing to, it's not, like you said, it's really not difficult. I did a lot of marketing for the sport, for the track, for my business, but it also, the local track did nothing, right? But they benefited on all of the money and marketing that I did. That was not my job, for them, but that was my job for my business, and it flowed back and forth. And that's where things got lost business wise, and that was unfortunate. But it's there, you know. What I think is getting lost is the word volunteer, and hats off to every volunteer that's out there. But I think more of these tracks need to get into paid staff. You can have a 501c3 and have paid staff. You can have a business. Everybody's not, they're staying within these confines of 501c3 and volunteer. Volunteer is a hard word to digest these days. Hats off to everyone out there, not throwing stones, but paid staff. You know, why wouldn't you have paid staff? Why wouldn't you pay your staff to run your races at your track? And it's always that, oh, that person running around trying to get the volunteers and trying to get, everybody to help run the track. And everybody has their life. Everybody has, their on a certain amount of energy. And I'm not saying this is about money, but it's about reality. It's about a
Yeah.
business. Create it like a business, create it like a convenience store, create it like a bike shop, create it like whatever you want. That's the model you need to follow. It's BMX. Adapt it to an e-commerce scenario, and then you're gonna be successful. take tools like the league, that are involved. I had the academy. I had an academy that could be placed anywhere. Every track in the United States, there's nobody that could say that it does not deserve to have a teaching component, whether it be once a week, whether it be that's fine and dandy, but a lot of the once a weeks are for the intermediate expert riders. We actually did a beginner program on Mondays and we did intermediate and expert on Wednesdays. So we gave opportunities for those to train. But are you giving enough to your business to create the new riders? Are you marketing? What's your advertising budget? How much are you boosting on Facebook, Instagram? It's there. You just have to go out and get it. I think everybody hats off to all the track operators, but a lot of them just don't have the time or the energy, or they don't have that person that can help facilitate those key components to the business. They go to a job in which has an owner. They're an owner of their own business, but yet your track is a business. You're the owner, you work for the track. It's just that's where I think a lot of things are getting lost. Is where volunteers, that's a hard word to navigate through in this day and age. Volunteer is great. I volunteer. I do a lot of things. I volunteer. I love karma. Karma's great. But when somebody has an opportunity to volunteer, or not, sometimes they're not going to, just because maybe they have something else that takes precedence. Maybe they have a second job. Maybe they do a food truck on the weekend. Maybe they do XYZ. It just doesn't, it could work better is all I can say.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is tough because I think a lot of times we have the idea of volunteering is synonymous with that of being abused and overused. And we get this idea in our heads of, okay, well, if I say yes to this, I'm here until I die. And I'm just gonna, keep going, trucking along, and I'm never gonna be able to get out of it. And I think that in a volunteer led organization, I think having one of the things that we've been focusing on is what are your three material needs? And then for 2025, we're going into for tracks, what are your three volunteer needs? And I really want to help tracks break down what do you need by, okay, I need an announcer for 2 races a month. I need a corner marshal for 2 races a month. I need someone to run the starting gate for 2 races a month. And so for me, that's something that is easy to process. It's easy to go, oh yeah, I can give every other Thursday to come out to the track, and I can do that. Now maybe I start volunteering more. I start running the gate a little bit more often, but if it's something that's simple and manageable, then I think it's easier to get that commitment as opposed to, will you run the gate for the rest of your life? And
Right.
and it scares people when it's indefinite. And so it's like, okay, yeah, I can, or for 3 months, yeah, I can absolutely do that. For the summer, for the season, I can do that for 2 races a week or 2 races a month.
No, I agree, and that's called a scheduler. The scheduler for the business schedules those things that they do, and then a lot of track. Even if you had people like you have that one person that does 2 times a month, he's scheduled. He or she's scheduled. Other people are scheduled. If you give an advantage, or if you give some type of a consideration to somebody, like you could even have a job board, a job list, or when you come to the track, and if there's something in it for them other than volunteering, because when you volunteer, if you're the stager and you're involved in the sport in 6 months, you're not, it's hard to watch your child. You're involved in the sport for the best kept, the best reasons, but yet you're not able to be that parent.
Yeah.
Term marshal has a different, the starter has a different scenario. Everybody has different key roles, but some of these parents that are volunteering are really sacrificing that enjoyment of watching their riders. So there's a lot of, dips and valleys, but I think as long as everybody understands, or you rotate people around, it's a business. You need to have it scheduled, accordingly, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that it's you've got to be very careful with those people because they are an incredibly valuable asset. Yeah, the track's important, but I think the volunteers and the riders are going to be two of your most valuable people, in order to run what you got. And I mean, obviously, if we look back at the sport and even in the like we like to focus on the track. It's a tangible. It's something that we want to preserve or we want to protect or we want to perfect. Um, but in that same way, if you look back to the early 80s, even you were mentioning Cash Matthews and you were talking about Scott Breithaupt. Going back to those tracks, they were far from perfect. They were perfect in what they offered, but it wasn't like they were immaculately maintained tracks. It was just kids out on the dirt riding around. So sometimes that track has to go to the wayside. And we need to focus on the volunteers and the riders too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, could you imagine tracks on side of hills and mountains right now? With
So
landowners and
cool.
whatnot. Uh, I just heard like just in like there was a conflict in a motocross or supercross event um, recently that was a really beautiful. You talked about the motocross and supercross supermarket, but there was a recent event that was canceled because of the landowners didn't agree to terms. So
Oh yeah.
it's a big deal. It's a big deal. I mean, what we got away with, I guess you'd say, once upon a time, and what you can get away with now are completely different. And look at USA BMX. Look at the insurance that it takes. Look at what can happen on 300 tracks in the United States in any given day. You've had accidents. I was involved in a local track. My local track had a unfortunate injury, which the rider was hurt very, very severely. That track operator was in the court system for 8 or 9 years dealing with that litigation alone. So people that want to throw stones and say ill words about USA BMX, they need to stop, because if you've never been involved in it, if you've never been in an accident yourself, an auto accident, you can't say that it's not a big deal. Just the insurance alone is a huge component of BMX racing, just monumental.
Yeah. Yeah. And the amount of, maybe I would say ease that having the insurance available. If you want to start a track, you're going to have to go through some hoops with USA BMX. But the reality is, you can create a place for people to ride, and you can create an opportunity for kids to be out on the track without having to deal with all of that insurance. I mean, people don't want to deal with an insurance headache on just I mean, I moved to a different state. People move to a different state and you have to transfer your insurance. You have to get new insurance. Nobody even wants to deal with that phone call, let alone the liability insurance for what, 10 to 100 plus kids or people that are out on your property and have a
Oh yeah.
great potential of getting hurt.
Huge, and the financial aspect is astronomical. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so car insurance, home insurance, you have it for number one, the legality of things. If you own your home and you don't have home insurance and you get hit by a hurricane, what are you going to do? Where are you going to come up with $500,000 or $200,000 to repair your house? Insurance is there for a reason. And USA BMX, the category of their insurance is huge. Even as an academy, I had to have specific insurance, and it was a challenge. Even early, like I think it was in 2022, the sport is changing and bicycles are changing. I had a hard time just insurance because we had USA BMX insurance as well, but I had to have insurance for my company too. So just as a company, doing what we do, it's really, really a challenge sometimes to get correct insurance that will cover you. And that's what's good about having the USA BMX license, coaching license, is you get insurance. And also I have USA cycling licenses, which gives you another level insurance, especially if you're teaching out of the country. So those tools are there. Number one, we have to have a license. No, you have to have a license for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
Accountability, responsibility, credibility, and insurance is a huge component of being able to go out and do the best you can in a risky environment. And everybody knows that BMX is a risk. to a certain degree.
Quick detour to one of our gold level sponsors, Luminex Neon, who has partnered with us to help accomplish the mission here at BMX Breakthrough. We're so grateful for their opportunity, and there's a special place, a near and dear place in my heart for neon, all things neon, whether that's on paper, whether it's shoes, whether it is a sign in a living room or a garage space, it doesn't matter. I love neon, always have, probably always will, and so neon signs create a unique statement piece. So if you're looking for that for your bike shop, for your garage, for your workspace, maybe it's for your living room, Luminex Neon offers exactly what you need. So with unparalleled craftsmanship and endless design possibilities, Luminex Neon is your go-to for brightening up any space. You can follow the link in the description and use our promo code BMX Breakthrough 10 in order to get 10% off of your order and to explore everything that Luminex Neon has to offer you.
I want to ask, go back a little bit to the beginning of your time in BMX. So you said it started in 1981. You got a second place trophy. So what was it from? You've been involved for a couple of years now. So from that time of getting that second place trophy in 1981 to now in 2024, what is it about BMX that drew you in, kept pulling you closer, and has kept you?
Just the thrill of the moment. I mean, for me, everybody, my parents gave me everything as far as got me involved in different sports. It started out as flag football. It started out as t-ball, baseball. I didn't do soccer, but those key sports, which every young person or majority of young people are involved in, I did. I participated from, it was t-ball, and then you had machine pitch, then you had coach pitch, then you had boy pitch. And then in football, you had flag football, you had tackle football in high school. I started school in Florida, you know, and in between Texas and Florida, we moved to Texas when I was 6. I had to take a test when I went to Texas because the laws are different. So I ended up going to first grade instead of having to repeat kindergarten. But for me, the reason I stuck with BMX is pretty interesting. A lot of different reasons, but I was kind of a year ahead in school. Everybody was older than me. Everybody was taller than me. Everybody was bigger because I was kind of like a low bloom. So I was in football and middle school and junior high. But when I got to high school, there was 2-day practices and there was A team and B team, and I was smaller. And then that's when the choice was like, oh, you know what? I was on amateur teams, and I left 7 days after school ended for the summer. And then I only came home 7 days before it started. I was out on tour with Stud, with Eagle Snacks. Roland Racing helped me early on in my career. Those are the things, the support that kept me involved. But it really gets down to the pictures that I think of back in the day. 1981, second place trophy, Armadillo Downs. We stopped and got information, saw. So my dad liked to do, interesting things on the way home from dinner. He just, there's lights and activity. And that's probably one of the number one keys. How did you get involved in the sport? Lights and activity on the side of the road and on a piece of land or whatever. But I remember everything that went into it, getting involved and seeing how exciting it was. And it's still exciting. The energy that you had, the bicycle that had a $40 white store special, like an auto parts special, was orange 4616 with like a 5-inch crank. It had a square back tire and a knobby front tire. And there's a picture of me in my Houston Oilers uniform, because I used to love the Houston Oilers. 1212 was my first number. I remember whenever my stepdad got me involved, my mom, we rebuilt my bike. I was sitting there watching my dad re-grease my bottom bracket. All of these things are still vivid in my mind about how I got involved in the sport and why I stuck in the sport. Because for me, it was part of my life, and it ended up being one of those things through the support of my family, whether it be my mom, dad, aunts, uncles, cousins, everybody's still supportive. Even to this day, That's why I stayed involved. I stayed involved because I had so many people around me and support around me. And then with that support, I was able to get sponsorships with some top level teams that allowed me to continue to do what I love, which turned into a profession. So the longevity and the story of it, of every rider out there is different, but it really comes down to that key support, family support. It's a family sport. Everybody has their roles, and it's really, really challenging in this day and age of people having multiple jobs. Things are a little bit more not as simple as they used to be. And hats off to all of those family members that are taking these riders to races. We used to take neighbors to races, because they didn't have an opportunity. So that's what kept me in the sport, was just living that moment of speed, jumping, different tracks. And here's an interesting thing too. The state of Florida has 16 tracks. The state. We're going to do a comparison, and everybody can do that in every state. 16 tracks in the state of Florida right now. I just looked at USA BMX because I was doing a little bit of research for this, for your opportunity. In Houston, Texas, one city in the state, in the 80s, we had 17 tracks in a 50-mile radius of Houston, Texas. There's 16 tracks in Florida. There were 17 tracks in a 50-mile radius of Texas, in Houston, Texas. Every track had an average of 100 riders per track. When you went to South Houston, it felt like you were going to a different state. We had 3 sanctions. We had ABA, we had NBL, and we had USA BMX. There was a lot of other ones in different states, that have a similar story. But in those simpler times, for a lot of different reasons, the sport was bigger. It was a lot bigger back then than it is now. It's really niche now. And I think it's really, that's what that responsibility we talked about, to keep the riders going. How can you keep the riders going? You need to be able to make sure you have a mentoring program, a league at your track, an academy at your track, a beginner program at your track, anything to keep those beginners. Because if a beginner is lost and they don't understand the sport, they're going to get intimidated and they're not going to come back. But if you're able to at least be greeted by somebody, a new rider program, once a month, once a week, whatever you can do, anything to give them the opportunity to grow inside the sport and not be as intimidated. A lot of people have a passive personality. Some people have an aggressive personality. Some people fall in the middle. People have so many things to do, but it's really responsibility of the track to facilitate a program that riders can be involved in. But it really comes down to the family and friends. How can that rider get to the races? Does he have that support? Does he have the money, the financial resources? And hats off to every person out there that donates to these special, causes for riders or groups or teams or whatnot. It's really, really a really, really challenging sport to deal with. And I think, like I said, there's just so much more potential that we have, but it's really going to take a collected effort to really just continue to plug away at it. And you're going to be in front of somebody of influence. And maybe that person, there's been a lot of celebrities that are involved in the sport, but one day there's a possibility that it will come in front of a person of influence that can make a difference above and beyond where we're at right now. Can we at least be close to ready for that? And allow that opportunity to happen.
That's good. Yeah, I think that's a good question. Are we prepared for that opportunity? And what does it take for us to get ready as a sport? What does it take for us to prepare? And what does it look like for us to prepare for that opportunity? And and maybe that opportunity is literally just a bunch of people working really hard to get the sport ready and to grow the sport. But yeah, you talked about even the 16 different tracks versus 17 tracks in 50 miles. And so got 16 spanning an entire state. Well, obviously there are a lot of tracks that are really far away from certain riders' homes. It's not as accessible as it maybe once was. And I mean, Johnny Johnson talks about his dad packing up a bus in Southern California and San Diego and taking what was that, 20, 30 riders on
Mhm.
Sunday mornings. He'd go around, pick them up, throw the bikes on the top, and they'd go to the track. And that was really cool and a really cool opportunity. But the tracks, I think sometimes they were closer, and they had, they were in a smaller radius than they are now. Somebody could obviously still pack up a bunch of people and go, but going back to your comment earlier about tracks, is that even in that same way of you got away with a lot of things that we wouldn't get away with now. There are more illegalities around picking up kids
Mhm.
and tossing their bikes on top of a bus and stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely,
Uh,
absolutely,
but
absolutely.
but proximity definitely plays into it a little bit. And because it was fun, and there were tracks. And I think over in Europe, I was talking to a friend that's in France, and he said that what is it, within something like that, like a 25-mile or 50-mile radius of Paris, I think there's something like in the teens of track numbers.
Wow,
And
wow.
so Europe is doing something it's far different than what the US is doing. And they have a lot of tracks, a lot of opportunities to ride. And I think that that ultimately just being more accessible uh, may make something different. Also, I think that I was talking to uh, or no, my dad was having a conversation with Barry Nilsson uh, a few months ago, and he was talking about how the Orange Y would have 100+ motos, and they would race on Saturday nights. But one thing that was super interesting that he commented on was that it was an every other week race. So it was every other Saturday, and then they'd have all these riders and turnout. And I think that sometimes tracks racing so many times per
Mhm.
week, I
Yeah,
almost think that less is more, in
yeah,
the sake that you commented on things are different. You A lot of times multiple members of the family are working, maybe multiple jobs working. And so if it's something that's every other week, we can plan and prepare, and you and I can show up on the same day. Whereas if there's a
yeah,
Tuesday race and a Friday race, or a Tuesday and a Saturday, whatever, you and I might miss each other because there's 8 races a month instead of 2. And
yeah,
so
yeah.
budgetary
I agree.
constraints, schedule constraints, all that. And so anyway, yeah, I think there's obviously a lot of factors, but yeah, it is really interesting you talking about 17 tracks within a 50-mile radius of Houston. So
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. I should have checked Texas, but I don't even know if Texas has 17 tracks. It's bigger than Florida, so it's really a challenging. I could get back to a challenging market, for the sport.
yeah,
But I think the one thing that has helped BMX in the whole are municipalities. There's been a lot of municipalities, and that's where USA BMX has really made it helpful for tracks to get involved in municipalities, because it really is hard. If you want to be the best you can be, you want to go open a track on a parcel of land, good luck to you. It's going to be a really, really challenge. But when you're part of a municipality, you're able to build a track that's on a grand scale, or a simple track. There's a lot of different tracks all over the country that have different levels of municipality help. And that really helps with the legality issues, the insurance issues, everything across the board. It's just really, really difficult to rent a piece of land. I mean,
yeah,
really, really hard, especially when you're dealing with insurance and sport, and a dangerous sport as BMX can be. So all of those people that are doing what they can, like you said, the person with the bus, we had, I think, Bill Prince here in Florida. He's known for renting a bus, taking riders up to the world championships and doing what he could back in the day. He was a team manager for a lot of different teams. You have people that are still involved in the sport. Brian Fell with Mega Design, doing everything it can, and we'll talk to that rider and mentor that rider. There's still a lot of people involved in the sport that are still giving back, whether they're at the track or not.
yeah.
And getting back to what you said, that's why I'm still involved. That's why I was still involved, and to this point, just because I had that support from all of those different components, in those days, and then even now.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. And I think that there's so much value to the sport, and there's so many things that kids can learn. Obviously, you've taught kids of and students of all different ages, which is super cool, and being able to invest into that next generation and be able to help to grow the sport. And I mean, it's cool seeing how long as well that you've been involved.
At this moment, I'm going to interrupt our episode, our current interview, briefly to give a special shout out and thank you to our sponsors that have backed us financially in this project, in our mission, and give them a huge thank you. So at our gold level, we have Luminex Neon and Marketing Breakthrough. At our silver level, we have Sound Cedar Lumber and Bicycle Thieves. And at our bronze level, we have Pro Start Gates and Justin Shepard, Title Examiner. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for backing us. If you are looking for help with any project that you're working on, if you're looking for some cool things to do, go ahead and check out the links to their websites in our description and go ahead and visit them, show them some love. We are so appreciative for their support. And if you are interested in getting involved in a local track, helping out, or sponsoring a local track, sponsoring the BMX Breakthrough project as a whole, please reach out at j@bmxbreakthrough.com. You can also go to our website and find out some of the needs of tracks and some of the things that we are working on at bmxbreakthrough.com. Once again, thank you so much for your support. Let's dive back into this conversation.
Was it 90 that you started racing pro?
Yeah, 1990. I've been in the
Okay.
sport 43 years. I started in
Okay.
1981, so I just completed, it's my 44th year in the sport.
Okay.
So yeah, I've been involved pretty much the whole time.
Then you raced pro until '06?
I raced pro at the elite level to the end of 2006. Took a little bit of time off after, but then I got involved in Vet Pro, which was awesome too, to be able to still be involved in the sport.
Okay.
But I had children at the time, and that was a risk. So I kind of slowed down my BMX a little bit, but I still was involved, on the other
Cool.
side, teaching, but not competing, on the risk factor, just because being a sole provider for a family and whatnot, everybody has their story and their challenge in their life. So yeah, so that was, I enjoy this part. Me teaching a rider is really, it's helpful for me just from the mentality of things, because I miss the sport. I miss traveling. I miss jumping on an airplane and renting a car, in Idaho or Montana or wherever, Wyoming, California. I mean, I've been really fortunate to be able to travel the world many times over. And I would never have gotten to do it if it didn't start out with my family and everybody that was involved at my local track when I was 8, 9 years old. It never would have been possible, because everybody has a story, but the story is a little bit easier to tell and a lot more happier to tell when you have that support around you. I didn't do any of this on my own. I had a lot of people around me. Even on the professional side, we lost Harry Larry recently. He is probably the number one person that's responsible for me achieving what I achieved. Everybody had their part in the integral times of my career, but he was the one that gave me that sponsorship on balance, that got me to the nationals, on a consistent basis on a sponsorship. Before that, it was Bill Grad. He was one of the ones that worked for ODI, and he had a lot of help with a lot of riders. That was like my fundamental sponsor was Bill Grad, outside above and beyond family and whatnot. So that everybody had their place. Greg Hill, Redline. Balance went away, pulling me over to Redline, becoming my mentor and coach, and achieving the best. So there's so many pieces to my puzzle, and I would not be here if it wasn't for that. And we're getting at a day and age, I'm a young 52, I guess you'd say, we're losing our people, we're losing our family, we're losing our unfortunately, just when you get older, things start to happen, and we start to see what our parents saw and can understand what they said. But now we're losing our heroes. We're losing a lot of those pioneers of our sport, and hats off to them, and God bless them all. But those people, I'll remember them for the rest of my life. I mean, they were part of my story. So that's why I'm here, because of people like that. No, there's no way that I'd be here if it wasn't people that allowed me to the opportunity to not only race for a brand, Mongoose in the latter part of my career, GHP and Vet Pro, a lot of different teams. So sometimes that the challenges are rough and the story is like a roller coaster ride, but it's like, how long can you hang on? Like I said, when you fall on a BMX bike, if you're able, jump up and start riding again. So
Yeah.
it's been really fortunate above and beyond. And Facebook is a huge thing. I always rejoice with Facebook all the time. You get the memories, and I'll post a memory because I'm really a pretty shy, laid back kind of guy. But you'll just get photos that you've never seen before. And I posted a couple recently, and it's just energy and support. It's like it's just a way for me to say thank you for everything that the sport's given me, and I'll continue to go and whatever and whenever I can.
That's super cool. Yeah, I remember you on Redline. So that would be the extent of my racing was really like the 96 to '02 is when I ended up getting out of it. And so I remember you on Redline, and I raced an RL 180 and junior that I've still got in a box, but
Oh, nice.
anyway, it's pretty fun, like looking back. And I remember seeing you at, what was it, the Great Northwest National in Sumner, Washington in '99, I think, or '98. I can't remember which one, but anyway, that was a really cool moment. And then I was curious. I wanted to ask you about this because at one point I think it was Flixtrix that turned you into an action figure.
Yeah.
So I was curious, what was the feeling like of becoming an action figure?
That was, talk about surreal. I never even thought that would ever happen. And like the whole process of just kind of the timing of the sport, we talked about pre 2000. It was when like 96, like that era that you talked about was one of the best for the athletes in the professional ranks across the board, whatever sponsor you were on. And so being involved with Redline, I was out there. I was doing all these events. I was in our media, which media wasn't really media like it is now. Back then, magazines were huge. But I remember just being involved and coming about, and then sending me like, believe it or not, like a basic camera, like one of the disposable cameras, which is interesting because technology was not the same as it is now. I remember I had to take like photos. I've been having like every couple inches of my entire face and head. It was just like, really, like
Wow.
I was in such um, a great spot in my career. Performance was there, sponsorship was there, the financial aspect was there. Things were, going really, really well. And just when that happens, sometimes it cascades into opportunities, because of who I race for, because of, my performance, because of what maybe I've done in the sport overall, you know, um, national titles, world titles, whatnot. That's when you get a action figure. It's like, never thought that in a million years. And it's one of those things that I just kind of shake my head. It's like, wow, you see them on eBay now. You see them. I have some that are left too, but it's like, it's really, really cool. It's really cool that BMX was able to capture that type of a market aspect. And I think you still could do that. I think you could still do that. And I think hopefully that BMX riders will become a little bit more of a household name somehow, some ways. I don't know when it will be, but that's when the sport is really going to take it to another level to overcome the challenges of just being that really simple sport, that we talk about before, like things just kind of changed, the world changed. So every decade the world changes a lot, of every year it changes, but aspects of the market, aspects of consumable products and goods have a lot to do with why things turned. Things kind of plummeted after 2000 for a lot of different reasons, and now we're Olympic, and we still deserve, I think, a little bit more credibility and more ridership to where every rider can be kind of a star. And I just hope that the sanctioning body can really maybe embrace the professionals in a different way, or in an additional way, to be able to get them out there to whenever you can. And I think there are some pro pages. I have to look at it, so I don't want to say too many things. But I think it'd be nice if you could go into, I mean, you probably can, especially with the Hall of Fame being in Tulsa. It'd be nice to go into USA BMX and look at the history of professionals and the history books that you can kind of access. And I think that's a great thing that they've done there, to be able to capitalize on their involvement in the sport and what it's going to take to kind of take that sport to the next level. And having a headquarters, having that Hall of Fame, inductees, and having that whole display. That's just, I still have some stuff I want to donate to it, but I'm having a hard time, letting go of it. They want my title bike. They want my 1997 title bike, and I have all my stuff still. And I think one day I'm gonna donate it too. But I'm just so honored to have a jersey on the wall. It's just pretty cool, surreal, because they have a red line jersey, and I think they have a world championship jersey as well. So it's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
They've
It
got
was just
the jersey up on the wall is the red line jersey that I have, that I got when you were racing,
oh,
um,
okay,
which
awesome.
is which is cool. And then I was gonna say, as you were talking about the being turned into the action figure, it was super cool. I remember getting it. I don't know where it is now. I actually looked through all my finger bike stuff to see if I could find it. I haven't seen it in years.
Oh,
But I remember being in fourth grade, and it was one of the time, in your life when you have those moments and you're like, you know what you want to do, and then somebody convinces you to do something else. And
uh,
so anyway, I'm still upset with, he's a good friend. His name is Kyle Burrows, and I'm going to throw him under the bus. And we raced together as kids, and in fourth grade he convinced me to open up the packaging, because I was going to leave it in the package, because that's what I've done with a lot of things. I just don't open things. And so anyway, but as I was looking through, I was like, dang it, Kyle. He convinced me, and I listened to him, and I shouldn't have, but I'd still have it in a package if I wouldn't have listened to him. So
wow. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I've had a hard time even keeping my children. There was one that I took apart, but like mine that I have left, I don't have very many. They're still like sealed, like I don't want to like break the package open at all. So I can understand that. Like, because once the package is open, it's gone. Like it can get scattered, and the pieces can get, there's so many little bitty pieces of the bike, and you got little tools and stuff like that. So that stuff goes away. So yeah, so I hope you can
yeah,
find it.
yeah, yeah. I know. Maybe one of these days I'll be able to track it down. But I still have the jersey, which just about fits my son. So uh, that'll be pretty
Yeah,
fun
and
to
even the
watch him wear.
packaging. Yeah, absolutely. Even the packaging was cool because I had an action shot on it, but then I had a bio on the back. I think it was a great thing for riders, and I think you can still do that.
Yeah,
There's still people that can recognize it, and even if a rider doesn't recognize it, right? I think you can create an identity or an identity of a rider just by producing it in the market somehow, some way. It's like, who is that guy? He's from Arizona and he races BMX. I like that guy. I like his number. There's a way to help, these athletes above and beyond, even if they're not the top level star, just be creating. And I think it was really great that UCI did the career numbers, and I thought
yeah.
that was really cool. And a lot of people have career numbers. Mine was 111 for the three titles: ABA, MBL, and UCI. I was only one of seven to ever do that in their life. So not a
Wow.
lot of many people have done that in their careers. So that's why I chose 111. People wonder what is the 111? It's ABA, MBL, and UCI in a career called a career triple crown. It was also one of the great things to try to do it all in the same year, but that's almost nearly impossible. But I was fortunate to be able to do it. But career numbers were great just because it's kind of like NASCAR. It's kind of like football. It's kind of like baseball. A career number can just kind of create like a little identity for people. And, I think there's a lot of opportunities, and I just hope that we can really harness all these opportunities to grow the sport and to really continue to capture at least the momentum that we do have and not let it fall short of what it could be. And I think it's a great sport. I think there's just so much more levels that it can be, all the way down, like we talked about with the local tracks, which is so hard. Hats off to all the track operators out there. I've been there, I've done that. I was involved at a young age. My parents were involved in a NBL track. Many nights covering the track when you used to cover tracks before the soul tack and whatnot. But it's such a hard job. it really
Yeah.
should be called a job, because it is. It's a huge job.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, John, I'll thank you. I want to be respectful of your time. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to have this conversation with you, because I think it was cool to hear. And if yeah, just to hear about the way that you are being able to be a proponent and an advocate for the sport now, to hear a little bit about the past, but I think more importantly, what you're working on in the present, and kind of dreaming about for the future. So I really appreciate your time and willingness to join me on a call.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you again for the opportunity. And anytime you want to do another one, we can take it off topic of John Burst. We can actually take it on topic of BMX. How can we do this? What would you do with a local track? Maybe you can get multiple people involved in a call to have a conference about BMX and stuff like that. So there's so many things. Because like I said, I'm not as technologically savvy as the majority of everybody has their YouTube channels and all that kind of stuff. So thank you for doing that, because it's really, really difficult. But I'm here. I'm here to help. So I think you're doing a great, great, service to BMX, and thank you. And I think hopefully creating that blueprint for that local track is key. And I would hope you could get some traction with that, no pun intended, because every track, if they could at least open up a manuals are key. I actually keep every manual to everything I buy, by the way. That's a little secret fun fact. I
Oh
love
wow.
manuals for whatever reason. Tracks have a manual. How do I do this? Where do I mark it? There's so many different things, and not every track has that resource available to them. So somebody, like you said, talked about a consulting basis. I think it'd be a great thing to just maybe one time put out a show for tracks. Maybe a BMX 101, BMX track 101 to help whatever you feel is necessary, to help. And then offering I think anybody that's available as a consultant, is going to be key, because tracks could consult you. They could talk to you right now and understand, how can I make my track better? And you could tell them for 30 minutes to an hour how to make their track better, and they could write their notes down. It's about getting the word out there to people and allowing them to have an opportunity to use those tools that are given to them to prosper their tracks and their local ridership. So hats off to everything you're doing, everything you continue to do.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun chatting with you, and again, appreciate your time.
Awesome. And thanks again to everybody in the sport. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for now you. So it's just one of those things that I'm just so very, very thankful for everything that sport has given me. Everybody that I've come across paths with, everybody that I know in the entire world. It's just a very, very surreal thing to be able to just be known in a market, in a sport, that still is as glorious as it is. And I think it will become even more glorious in the future. So thank you to everybody.
Absolutely. Thanks, John.
All right. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode. It is because of people like you and our sponsors who make this whole thing possible, because they have a desire to see the sport grow. If you would like to get involved in the mission of BMX Breakthrough, you can start by going to your local track, find a way to volunteer, help out, and serve there. Or you can go to our website, bmxbreakthrough.com, in order to donate, find out about sponsorship, or learn more.